Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the 10 Laws Podcast with East Forest. I'm East Forest. It is the new year of 2019. Well, it's the end of the new year. We're coming into 2020, depending on when you're listening to this. But I'm very excited to share with you another conversation I had. This is with Mona. Now, I'm very sorry. I actually realized when I met Mona, I didn't totally know how to say her last name, and I never asked her. It's either Haydar or Haydar. 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 Mona. We'll have to ask her. Regardless, with all due respect, she's an amazing woman because I didn't actually meet her at the SAN conference, but I saw her at the SAN conference. She was in a social justice or basically a panel, and she asked sort of made a comment or a question, and I think she's one of the presenters there as well, and just sort of perked up my interest. And so I dove into her world a bit more, and boy, is it interesting. She's a musician. She's an activist, a rapper, a poet. She's a chaplain. She has a viral song that she was well known for called Hijab, Rap My Hijab, which is a protest song that you can check out. And I'm going to play it at the end of this podcast. But she just has points of view that are sometimes my blind spots, in a sense that I don't have that same, I'm a white male. And so this conversation was really good and helpful for me because it helped me really be on my toes about what do I think, what do I know, what do I not know, and just to listen. And more than that, I just wanted to get into her world and get to know her better. And this podcast is always a really great way to do that. So I'm super excited to share this conversation with you. Also, if you're listening to this on Tuesday morning, December 31st, 2019, they are cremating Ram Dass's body today at 8:30 a.m. Hawaii time. So I'm in Mountain Time, so that'd be 11:30 a.m. Mountain Time. I'm just letting you know, in case you listen to this right now, perhaps you want to take a moment of loving awareness to send it out to our dear Baba as he goes through that sacred ritual of cremation. It's been a continued process of grief and beauty as this has unfolded over the past week. And I really appreciate all the heartfelt messages from lots of friends out there and fans and community members who have sent messages of support. Thank you. But really, I'm been very humbled to see how the music and the Reworks album that we just released, which, that just came out too. The Reworks album has been a real support to a lot of people and sort of been a backbone and the soundtrack to this process that we've all been going through in our own different ways. So, of course, an unintended happening that would coincide with that, but I'm glad to know that it's been able to provide some solace and a way to connect with Ram Dass right now. So if you haven't checked out the Reworks album, it's 8 reworks that we various artists were kind enough to do of the Ram Dass album, and on the new ones were from Nick Mulvey and the Album Leaf, but there are others on there, and they're just incredible. When it came out, we were kind of wrapped up in just getting it across the finish line. And then when I looked at it, I thought, wow, this is such an amazing group of people. I cannot believe that these folks came together and took our 14 songs and added their own take on it. And so now we have this even larger grouping of stuff. And just incredible how it ended not just 2019, but coincided with the end of Ram Dass's incarnation, his life. I'm still quite dumbfounded by it all, to be honest. But Rada and I have been here in Boise. We had a really nice Christmas, just kind of chilling. I've been taking time to work on the studio. I'm sitting in it right now. I've been building all sorts of acoustical frame treatments, and I'm in the mode of doing all the acoustical treatments. So I'm not finished with that, but I think within a week I can have these things up, and we can get this thing going. I've got the piano here to my right, and I've got these wonderful 13-foot ceilings and some windows that are up high, sort of transom windows that I built. And it's just been a joy to have a place to come and expand. And I've noticed any time in my life for the past 20 years when I would do anything in music that was sort of a step forward, and it was scary, sort of like a leap that was bigger, an investment in a way. It always ended up paying back, usually a lot. It's sort of like taking that leap allows something to support you. And I'm really looking forward to just being in this space and feeling free and low pressure and just more abilities to create. And other than that, because I'm crazy, I've been working on building a sauna at the same time. So I've got two big projects going on at once. And there was a covered patio at Rada's house, and I kept looking at it, and I was so missing my sauna in southern Utah. I've been up here sort of wintering, basing out of this place. And I thought this would be not that difficult of a place to make a sauna. We just, as I always say, it's not that complicated. You just put up 4 walls, it's a box, put in a wood stove, boom, sauna. It's not that complicated, but of course you have to put in every screw and cut every board and think through all sorts of problems and make a million trips to Home Depot and the lumberyard. But I love it, man. I love projects. I've done projects ever since I was a little kid, whether it was a restaurant I started when I didn't know how to cook food, or the haunted houses I do at my parents' house, or the block big hay structures I do with my friend Matt when we were little kids at his farm. Love projects. And I think that's why doing East Forest is good for me, because it's always just sort of project-based. So this is my little project lab, and maybe I'll give you a tour sometime soon on Instagram Live or something like that and show you around as soon as I feel like it's presentable. All right. If you're in Boise, Idaho, I am playing on January 1st, 2020, doing an East Forest ceremony to kick off the year at 4 p.m. here in Boise, Idaho. That's at eastforest.org/tour. And then after that, we'll be heading over to Australia. There have been a lot of logistics to try to make this trip happen. I'll be honest with you, it's pretty scary just going all the way over there and trying to make it work. And that's really what we're doing on this one. Props to my management team for helping make this happen, and everyone over there who is helping make it happen. But those tickets are now all on sale, and you can really help me out by letting people know and letting your friends down there, your Australian friends. I hope to see people that are in the community, and we can have a really powerful, deep experience, because that's why I'm coming, to fulfill my own energy and help cultivate yours. So looking forward to that. That's in February. There's dates throughout the country. Again, eastforest.org/tour. All right, let's get into this conversation with Mona. Here it is.
What the hair look like? Bet that hair look nice. Don't that make you sweat? Don't that feel too tight? Yo, what your hair look like? Bet your hair look nice. How long your hair is? You need to get your life. You only see Oriental. You steady working that dental. You popping up at the lip and run your mouth like a treadmill. Not your exotic vacation.
All right, so I was trying to ask you where you are right now, because I know you're from Flint, Michigan, but where are you at right now?
Yeah, so where I am is always a big story.
Me too.
I'm very nomadic, not by like purposefulness or intention, but just by the nature of my life and what kind of life has been for me. Currently, I'm living in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is where I am right now. But
beautiful. Yeah,
like when my husband and I sat down and we were like, okay, where are we going to live? And it's going to be our forever home. New Mexico was number one on the list. So we're back home for us, definitely. It's where we met.
How did New Mexico get on your radar? I mean, I actually looked at New Mexico as well to live there, and I went on this whole tour for 2 weeks, just to look for a place to live, to really dive in deep. It ended up not being the spot, but I'm curious how that came on your radar or why.
That's a big story. So it was just 4 or 5 weeks before my 24th birthday, and my best friend had just passed away, my childhood best friend who I'd basically known all my life, and she took her own life.
Oh my.
And it was just crazy, heart-shattering situation. And I was talking to this guy at the time, and in my tradition,
we talk to people with the intention of marriage. So it's kind of like dating, kind of like not, but we were talking, and this guy had sent me this flyer because I was super interested in permaculture at the time. And he saw this flyer on Facebook, ended up sending it to me, and it was for the Llama Foundation. So I didn't end up with the guy, but I ended up at Llama Foundation. 4 weeks after my friend had passed away, I knew I needed a change, and I was working as a substitute teacher at the time. And something hit me, I was living in Flint, not fulfilling my purpose as a human being. And it was this like earth-shattering experience of losing her. And I found the cheapest ticket I could, $118 on Southwest Airlines from Detroit to Albuquerque, took a shuttle up the mountain on May 18th. And it was my 24th birthday, made it up the mountain in that shuttle. Got off the shuttle, felt like I was on another planet. I don't know if you've ever been to the mountains of northern New Mexico, but
Yes.
Yeah, looking down over the gorge, it was just like, whoa, this is, I felt like I've never done psychedelics or drugs, like heavy drugs like that, but it felt like a mind-altering, heart-altering experience of looking out at that vast expanse. And something in me changed. I was just like, this is where I'm meant to be. Was supposed to only be there for 3 weeks at the top of that mountain at Llama Foundation, where funny enough, Ram Dass wrote Be Here Now with the community. And
Wow.
Yeah. Did you not know that? Oh, that's...
Well, I know about the Llama Foundation, but I did not know he wrote it there.
Yeah,
That's
and
so
a
amazing.
lot of those illustrations came from community members at the time.
Oh my God.
All the screen printing stuff came from people on the land, and so all of that was like a co-creation with Ram Dass and the mountain, Ram Dass and that community of collaborators, and yeah, just this heart pouring from that Llama Mountain. It's kind of like when you've been to Llama Mountain and you read Be Here Now, you're just like, oh yeah, for sure. You get it.
Okay, that's on my bucket list now. I thank you for letting me know this. I mean, this is beautiful. Okay, so you made your way there, and how long ago was that?
Yeah, that was it was 7 years ago, 8 years ago. So whatever year that, my time and space understanding
7, 8 years. Okay.
It's not that great.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it was 2011 or 12, and now I can't remember exactly, but
okay.
I showed up there. I got off that shuttle, and the very first person I met is now the person I call my husband. So
Come on, first person.
The very first person on my 24th birthday, 4 weeks to the day of losing my best friend. Like it's one of those stories that like you tell people and they're just like, I don't believe you. like
That's nice. No, that's beautiful. You've got a few things like this, I think, in your life too, because it seems like some of your notoriety has come from this viral nature of how things spread on the internet, which in itself is a form of there's an alchemy and voodoo and mystery to it, in the sense of like, I don't know why this goes viral and that doesn't, and then what it can actually do to your life.
No doubt.
For you actually had some meat on the bone behind what your message was. So it wasn't like 15 minutes of fame and then, it's not like some cat video. I mean, this is like something very real. And, and it's continued. And so it's been a wonderful platform for you. If for folks that are unfamiliar with your work and they're just hearing this and they're just trying to get in, they might be thinking like, well, is there a way you could tell me like what you would think your message is? Do you have a coalescence of what that is for you? Kind of like for myself, for instance, it would be like through all the different things I'm putting out there, it's sort of the glue that keeps it together is people diving into themselves and hopefully through that empowering them to make their own choices that are more about connection and love in this world. But it's, it's that inner journey that I'm hoping to propel. Mm-hmm. What would you say your message is?
I mean, to condense it into like an elevator pitch, I love that idea. because it's so hard for me.
Or what are your passions? You know, what are the things that you find yourself
No,
into?
I love that challenge. Don't get me wrong.
It is a challenge.
I really love it. I would say that most definitely it's answering the call of love wherever you are, whenever you are. And for me, there's levels to love, and love is always calling to us, capital L love is always calling to us to be our greatest, most beautiful, most generous, most kind selves. And the work, similar to what you're talking about, is showing up and answering that call and listening more deeply to that call and allowing, allowing ourselves to get out of the way, in our individuation, in our unique human experience, to melt away and disappear, and to fall into and melt into that interconnection of the collective, which is home, so really allowing ourselves to answer the call so that we can arrive at home, and feel held and feel the generosity of the universe and to feel the generosity of the divine. And I think the better we get at answering that call, the more we feel it, whether it's physical or spiritual or emotional, whatever the feeling is, I believe that we feel it. So I would say, in 2 words, it's love always.
Love always. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sort of investigating this just by talking about it. So at any point, be like, no, that's not how I identify with this. But your message of love always is coming through your own process of your cultural identity and your religious identity and how that fits into like the way you live your life. And there seems to be, like, for some people, that's sort of what makes it interesting in some ways, is like there's a very specific sense of self and identity as a Muslim woman. Even like that song, the Hijab song, what's the title of it? Sorry, it's not in front of me.
Hijabi, rap My Hijab, yeah.
Yeah, which really took off. And that's such that symbol of the hijab is a powerful symbol today. It's like one of discussion and misunderstanding, and but yet you through that you're speaking about universality and connection and our similarities in a way as human beings, as souls. What's that like for you? Like, is that something that's just sort of like, well, that's me, that's who I am, that's where I'm coming from. But it also seems to be sort of conscious that you're like, well, you want to like put that at the forefront, that social activism and how it comes from your own walking your own life. Does that feel true?
Yeah, no doubt. I see myself as somebody who's walking a path towards enlightenment, towards self-actualization, whatever you want to call it. And Islam happens to be my tool that I'm using to help me refine my ego and listen to the instructions of my heart. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, he said, seek the counsel of your heart, even if the whole world is giving you counsel, even if all of those around you are giving you counsel. But like our instructions, our mission, our work in the world come through our own hearts, and nobody can tell you what that is. And so for me, hijab is such a powerful tool for my own personal liberation. I use it as a spiritual tool, like a practice similar to like meditation or yoga. Hijab is a spiritual practice for me that I use on a daily basis to trying to find the exact language. It's really to come to a deeper knowledge and understanding that I'm a multi-dimensional being having this experience right now. And that dimensionality, if that's a word.
It's a word now. Yeah.
Right. if that experience, like we live in a world that is so obsessed with reductivism and reduction and reducing, and here's the best way, and here's the only way, and here's the right way. And I believe that we all come with our own flavor, and that we all come with our own hearts, and that the divine didn't do that by accident. And so I'm in a world that tells me that, the liberation of women can only look like nakedness and nudity. And I just, that doesn't sit well with me as a feminist, as somebody who has, devoured and dived into the depths of my being and sat in silence for so long. I know deeply and truly that there are a million ways to liberation. There are a billion, a trillion, an infinite number of ways to liberation, and that no one can tell you what yours is. And I happen to be born into a way and a methodology that, came from a certain culture that I was also born into that instructs me on how to live. Like, I don't see Islam as a religion. I actually see it as a way of life. And the word Sharia.
Fascinating.
Yeah, the word Sharia, is such a boogeyman word in our society. The zeitgeist understanding and agreement on what Islam is so backwards and so based in Orientalism and racist empire ideology and citizenship within the Roman Empire, and Arabs were barbarians, and they were outsiders. They were not citizens, and they couldn't be civilized, similar to Africans and similar to every other culture that the Roman Empire basically colonized. And and so I'm just in the process of re-indigenizing myself into the way of life. Like, Sharia means a flowing water, the flowing waters. And when you give in to the flowing waters of your heart and of your life, and you are moving in accordance with your particular heart's goals and work in this world, magic happens. Like, you can go viral for literally just being yourself and for not working that hard, because you are not setting up these roadblocks of trying to fit into society's ideas about who you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to be. So the fact that my song went viral, I mean, I'll be really honest with you, it was shocking, because I didn't expect it to go as far as it did, but I knew I had made something beautiful. I knew I had made something that would speak to a lot of people. And I hope that with zero budget, zero marketing, that, the divine would do what the divine wanted to do with it. And because I believe in an infinite and eternal divine creator and source of love, I don't think anything is impossible. So.
Sure. Well, thanks for sharing, such a nuanced viewpoint about Sharia and hijab. I mean, if I think this is an important thing to talk about, especially from my own perspective as being a white male growing up in America. And there is a lot of mystery and misunderstanding. And I think especially for those who are progressive and in these sort of universal spiritual circles, like a lot of the folks in California, like we were hanging out with at Sand. I was in that talk. You were in the audience as well. I think it was about I don't remember the title of it, the panel. It was like Orland Bishop, and it might have been about spiritual bypass or I don't remember what the title was.
It was about social justice.
Yes, social justice. And it's a nuanced subject, and one that I think is really worthy of talking about. And I remember in that talk too, I don't know if they were talking about or it came up in my mind, but I was thinking about this idea of spiritual bypass in a sense. And I don't know if that just comes from ignorance of us not always knowing what to do. It's like, well, we know the big picture feelings, like, well, we're all one, really. But then how do we also honor our uniqueness and our histories and our culture? And I guess learning about each other, like the way we view the symbol of the hijab, in some ways, some folks see it as a form of oppression, or they're like, oh, how can you be a feminist and still support that? And what you're saying is, I mean, this fascinating idea of like, it's a form of meditation for you. Like it is a mechanism of awakening for you in a sense. It's one of the tools. That's a beautiful perspective. Not something I had have considered. I think I just like to hear more from you about also this idea of Islam being a way of life. That's kind of how I would view like Buddhism in a way too, like a way to walk through the world. Do you find, like, what's that process like, having sort of this larger spiritual view of connectedness and like non-duality alongside using religion and the traditions it comes with to like marry the two things together? Is that a seamless process for you?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I see Islam as a means to ultimate awakening because it is a way of life, because it instructs every part of my life, and it's not just a showing up on a certain day of the week or an action that I'm supposed to take part in, but it's a cohesive, integrated part of every moment of my existence. And it's a challenging path. It's a path that basically, I mean, for those who've studied Islam, they understand deeply that Islam is a connective tradition that doesn't just come out of thin air, that it's actually connected to all indigenous tradition, period. And that all peoples from all parts of the world, not just Abrahamic traditions, but all peoples were sent prophets, from the divine. Were sent, like I think about Black Elk, and I think about Mary, and I think about how much they have in common. And I see them both as prophets, similar to how I see Buddha and Muhammad and Jesus. And, there's so much lost because we're not in the work of taking wisdom and not just simply commodifying it and reducing it and calling it good. There's so many like New Age philosophies that are really hell-bent on reductivism and taking a tradition and saying like, okay, we took all the golden nuggets from it, and now here's what we've come up with. And we've done that with all the religions. And here's this new age religion that combines all of that. So if you do all of this, you'll definitely hit nirvana and yay. And that's so problematic because it's not a way of life. It's just chasing a state. It's just chasing an experience. And I believe that all wisdom is our inheritance as creatures of this earth, and that we take the wisdom where we find it. And that's not to say that we commodify it and try to make money off of it, because that's appropriation. But when you use it as a tool to manifest your best self in this world, in service of the earth and of all creatures of the earth and of the universe, that's really using the wisdom for what it's for, and that is service. So I see Islam as a continuation of that lineage. So every day, my day is filled with rituals that are intended to remind me that I am this multi-dimensional being in this experience, in this body right now, and that I have 5 daily prayers that force me to stop and recognize that also are connected to the sun cycles and the moon cycles, and I'm supposed to witness the celestial in my prayers, in the timings of my prayers, and I'm supposed to wake before dawn and sleep at full dark. And there are these practices of fasting and giving from my wealth and my my heart and in service, and all of these things that you're supposed to do that are supposed to be about your life. You pray before you eat, but not just like, thank you, God, for this food. No, like, let this food be a nourishment for me to be the greatest being of service to this world, this incredible world that I happen to be so lucky enough to be a part of. Let this food nourish this body that will return to the earth. Let that return be a beautiful return. Like, all of it is so connected. And even when we go into the bathroom and, relieve ourselves, there's a prayer, because that's a spiritual act as well. And, the act of like being with your partner, that's a spiritual act as well. And like all of that, I think all of those rituals of connecting yourself to a greater meaning in life is so lost in our society. And I think if a religion isn't doing that for you, if a way of life isn't doing that for you, then you should probably find a new one, because these rituals are so important. And that's why people don't know why they're alive. Like, I worked as a chaplain at NYU, and I have a master's degree in Christian ethics. And often, like, the students who would come and talk to me, they just lack a complete understanding of meaning. Like, why am I alive? What is the purpose of my life? Because there's no rituals to help you to understand why you're alive.
Do you think for those that don't have the background of a strong religion, like Islam or anything, which is more and more the case for Americans as they grow up, what are some other ways they can find that ritual in their life?
I mean, I think the beauty of mindfulness, I think, I think it's really been commodified, unfortunately, but the idea...
That's what we do in America.
Yeah. Our corporatocracy hasn't left anything sacred. Nothing is sacred anymore, And it's really challenging, because we all want more love. We all want a deepening of love in our lives. And I really believe that when we have meaning and we understand why we're alive, like that's the key. That's the golden ticket, as they say, and I'm just here for that. I'm just here to remind people that, like, you're here for a reason. So figure out what your heart's goals are for this world, what you're supposed to do, because we all come with a gift. And we have to figure out what that gift is. And it's always a gift of service, always. And we have to figure out what that gift of service is so that we can do it. Because if we don't, my friend Amir Suleiman, he talks about the world as a poem, right? A universe. And we're all parts of this poem. And if you try to be a period or a comma when you're the word the, or you're the word a, you ruin the poem, But when you occupy your own space and you be exactly what you're supposed to be in this world, which is a period or a comma or the word the or the word love or whatever it is, you complete that poem and you make it immaculate and you make it beautiful. And the problem is we're all trying to be the thing that we think is cooler or the thing that we think is better instead of being exactly what we're supposed to be.
I think most people would, everyone wants to know what their purpose is and live it. I think the hardest thing for a lot of folks is knowing it, finding it. You spoke earlier about, listening in a sense. I mean, how is it for you? Like, how do you listen and feel like you know that you're on that path, and versus doing something that isn't.
I think that's a lie of our society. I think it's a lie of our age, that it's hard to find your purpose. And I think the machine that is, capitalism doesn't actually want us to tap into our actual purpose. Because if we do that, we don't necessarily then serve capitalism, and we don't bow at the altar of capitalism. When you serve God and you serve the divine ultimately and nothing else, you are instantly catapulted into your purpose. Because the entire, this is a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is like what he said about the world, that when you submit to the divine conscripts the entire universe to serve you and your purpose. But when you submit to the creation instead of the creator, the divine conscripts the entire universe to stop you, to go against you. And basically, when people are coming up against roadblock after roadblock, it's because they're supposed to stop doing what they're doing,
It's a feedback loop in a way. You're saying, like, the information is sort of like all around you at all times in a fluid dance.
No doubt. It's been coming to you since the moment you took your first breath. Because our souls are imprinted with that knowledge, and that knowledge is actually, and this is hard for people because so many people don't know their lineage and don't know their ancestors and haven't sat in enough silence to listen to their ancestors, because your ancestors will speak to you, and your purpose is a part of your DNA, whether you like it or not. So it's a total lie that we don't know our purpose. Oftentimes we're just afraid of our purpose, and we actually know what it is, and we're just so afraid of doing it. I've heard from so many people, like, they ask me, how did you get the courage to just like go after what you wanted to do? And growing up in a culture like you grew up in, where music was forbidden, like, how did you overcome that? I think my ancestors were so loud, and my heart has always been so loud. And that's not true. It's not that but I've never been good at shutting that voice out. And I think some people have just gotten really good at shutting it out and just saying, well, my paycheck is enough and that's fulfilling enough. Or my life as it is now is good enough, and how am I going to turn my back on that kind of blessing? Well, if it's not your ultimate purpose, it's not a blessing. It's actually a curse, because it's just lulling you into a life that is meaningless and empty. And, like for some people, your purpose is to be an accountant. Your purpose is to be a janitor, and that's honorable. Your purpose is to be whatever, a CEO. Like, I feel like that's real and that can be true. And I'm not...
It could be anything.
I'm not saying that people's jobs are wrong because they're not connected to their ancestors. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is, when you're not serving your purpose, you know it and you feel it. And you feel unsatisfied and unfulfilled. And you feel untethered. And oftentimes what I've received from people over the years is that they feel like their lives have served no purpose and no meaning, and they feel like they're going crazy. And the only way to stop that is to then sit in silence and figure out what your purpose is, because deep down we all know it. We all know what it is, even if it's an abstract idea, an intangible idea. Like, think about how many people have like digital jobs right now, and how many people 10 years ago, their jobs didn't even exist, but we've created this world where if you dream it, you can probably do it.
So sitting in silence to you seems like stillness and silence being a core way of self-realization and getting that feedback. Do you see meditation is it sort of literal like that for you? Is that the way of accessing that stillness?
Yeah,
silence?
No doubt. The Prophet Muhammad, before he received revelation, sat in a mountaintop cave for, days at a time, months at a time. And revelation didn't come to him until he had gone through enough of that spiritual purging that happens when you sit in silence. When you're alone with yourself, with no distractions, you have to face your trauma. You have to face your purpose. You have to face what the world is and what you're here to heal or serve or do or build, and you can't help but tap into that when you peel away all of the other stuff, when you're not trying to perform, when performativity goes out the window and you're not just out here to show people how cool you are and how great you are and how you make so much money and you're a good business person, or you have cool clothes or whatever. You get to a place of like really peeling away the layers, and silence is really the only way. And I know people who've done it by having just like breakthroughs, it just like an epiphany hits them. But I feel like that's rare. And those people are actually called like majdubin in Sufism, that like the divine literally like compels them into their purpose and they're dragged into it, whether they like it or not. Like, may our paths be gentle. May our purpose come to us gently. And may we not have some kind of like abrupt epiphany, because that's painful. And that's like,
yeah, that's my prayer for the planet, even though it's not seeming to be that way, but gentle power, gentle transformation.
yeah, tender.
But it is somewhat human nature, unfortunately, that we sort of often need large shocks, be it divorce or bankruptcy or near-death experiences, to engender lasting change. We're stubborn in a lot of ways. We're scared. We're scared to hear and to take that leap, like you said, or to, especially when we're in cultures where we grew up without that connection to our past or our ancestors or a religion or a tradition, bereft of ritual in our lives and inundated with, God, these days, just constant information and entertainment and distraction and misinformation. It feels like a really unique situation that we find ourselves in, particularly in the West, of our own unique problem of being lost. And kind of like you're talking about the capitalism and the way, or this corporate system that's in a sense trying to trick you all the time and sell you things all the time. And there's just a lot of charlatans out there and snake oil and bullshit about that's just not, it's candy, right? But that's the easiest fruit from the tree that we often find. And I know people are quite hungry for real authenticity and meaning.
Yeah, but the question isn't, are people hungry for it? I think the real question is, are people willing to put in the work? And that's
the only way, I would say.
Yeah.
The path.
The path is beautiful, and it takes all of your attention and it takes all of your intention. And so many of us are just not willing to give ourselves over to it completely, because we assume that if we forego our power, that we become powerless, when in reality, the spiritual law tells us that when we forego our power to the creator of power, we become the most powerful. And that, like, I'm somebody who doesn't believe in the laws of time and space, because I come from a tradition of people and stories and real life beings who walk a path that is unrestricted, and where they can be in two places at once, where they, can speak any language that it comes to them. And these realities, and we call them karamat, that they're gifts from the divine, but that when you bow to ultimate power, you become a free agent, like if you think about the Matrix, and, you free yourself from the system, you actually don't lose power. And that's what I think people don't understand, is they feel like they lose something. Like for me, I think what's very difficult to relate to a lot of people, they see me in my hijab and they see me as having given up something, that I've given up me showing my hair to the world, right? Like,
Yeah, tell me more about that, because that's a common
yeah, and they
image.
see me as like oppressed, that a man is forcing me to
Mm-hmm.
do that, when I see this, like I can't even explain to you. Only a woman who wears hijab can actually explain to you especially one who's connected to the tradition in a spiritual sense, is like the liberation that comes from giving yourself over to a power greater than yourself. You attain absolute freedom. And I mean that literally and figuratively. I mean that emotionally and spiritually. I mean that physically and socially. That, like, one example would be that if I so choose to not be bound by the beauty industrial complex that is hell bent on selling me the newest foundation and the newest cover up and the newest eyeshadow palette, like, I actually, for the most part, opt out of that world. Like, me and my husband were talking yesterday about the world, and what's common is that, you go out and you get your manicure every week and you get your hair cut and dyed, and you follow the trends and you get your balayage, or I actually don't even know what the latest thing is, but you get your and, like, if you're not doing that, you're not taking care of yourself, and these are self-care mechanisms, and actually, like, they're oppressive. These systems of oppression look very nice and they look beautiful, and they are about beautification, but they're just about beautification of the body. And I'm interested in a holistic approach to beautification. Am I doing as much work on my internal life as I am on my external? Like, yeah, I'll buy the new foundation or the new organic moisturizer or whatever it is, as long as I'm also going to therapy, as long as I'm also doing the work with my teachers, as long as I'm also sitting in meditation and in silence in the same amount or even more than I'm spending at the nail salon or the hair salon. So it has to be a harmonious exploration. Otherwise, it's moot, and I don't
Right.
believe in pure physicality. So, like I was talking about people who can bend the laws of time and space, like, that for me is the perfect example of, like, what happens when you decide that you bow to the altar of the one instead of society, instead of people and the systems we've created for ourselves to govern us. And yeah, like, that's what I'm most interested in.
Can I ask you about, I'm thinking about like parallels, like when Christianity and sort of its ideals or even Gnostic ideas, and then all the way to like fundamentalist modern Christians, and all the things in between that have happened over time. And then the little I know about Islam, I understand what you're saying about the hijab being sort of like this holistic tool and piece for your own liberation, and also a ritual in itself. And that's not in conflict for you personally as a feminist. It's actually quite the opposite. How do you feel about like the burqa, or are there ways that hijab, if like you're someone who has this holistic view, I mean, you're so awake about your process and how it fits into the world and your spiritual life. Do you think that's necessary? Like, do you have to have that consciousness in order for the hijab to be that sort of positive conscious tool in your life?
Yeah. So, I mean, religion is notorious for being weaponized by power structures that are very interested in calling themselves the name of that religion, but not actually, performing the necessary actions to be that religion, to be that thing. So a lot of governments, for instance, call themselves Muslim, call themselves Christian. Like the US is a Christian nation, but we suffer some of the highest rates of domestic abuse in the world. We maternal mortality rates are so high in this country, and that's because we don't listen to women. And that's a global crisis that we face as a human family. We share a global crisis as a human family, and that is toxic patriarchy and toxic masculinity. And masculinity is sacred. It's a sacred energetic force in our world that is so necessary to our world. But it can't dominate, it can't take over. And when that happens, you see disharmony in the world. And what happens is that religion is weaponized by governments that call themselves that religion. Like the US calls itself a Christian nation, in God we trust. And if we think about the legacy of this country, and what we're not that far removed from is slavery, chattel slavery. And that was, something that good Christians believed was okay. And that wasn't that long ago, So when you think about things like that, it should put us in the mindset of understanding that just because someone calls themselves something, just because somebody says that there's something, doesn't necessarily mean that they're in the work, that they're actually applying the tools that they have at their disposal to be that thing. Like you were talking about charlatans and snake oil earlier. We live in a global crisis of that. We live in a world that these masks, and they are falling away. And I'm so grateful for that. But also it's creating a lot of feelings of anxiety. And that's a global crisis that we're facing right now. So many people are experiencing heightened levels of anxiety, and so many people are experiencing panic attacks for the first time. And that's because these systems are falling away and the masks are falling away, and we're able to point at something and say, oh, actually, that's not an Islamic practice to force a woman to do anything. It's un-Islamic, actually. And so stipulates the Quran. And there's a verse that says explicitly that there can be no compulsion in the tradition. And that if you are compelled, that, that you cannot be compelled. And that to be compelled is void, that is outside of the tradition. So, when I see laws like that, I don't see it as Islam. I see it as a weaponization of something that they're calling Islam, a facade. It's a usage of something that is spiritually potent and powerful, and saying here we are, we're gonna tell you that you have to do something, and it's for your own good, and you just have to trust it. That's not how spiritual awakening and liberation happens. That's not a reality of our world. So
there has to be choice. That's a major element of the spiritual path.
You have to offer yourself up to the divine, and you have to choose to do it. And that's what our lives are, is a series of events that are getting you ready to ultimately offer yourself up to the divine, period. And all of our lives and all of our life's experiences are simply a means to get you closer to the divine, to the creator. And the more you see it as that, the more it's like, Ram Dass talks about the cosmic comedy, like the more you see it and you're just like, wow, this is hilarious. I can't believe I didn't see it before. And the more you witness it, the more you become a part of the conversation instead of like witnessing the conversation,
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people call it witnessing,
Sounds like a lisp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's cute though.
Do you think religion is necessary to walk that path, or at a minimum, maybe an advantage, a major advantage to you, or can it be done these days without it, kind of forging your own or making your own?
I mean, we live in a time where we're so lucky to have access to the world's wealth of spiritual traditions and spiritual practices that we can have the option to utilize for our self-actualization in service of the world. But again, the problem isn't our access. The problem is in our fear and our society telling us that we actually don't need it. You can just figure it out by yourself. That you can just like light a bunch of candles and figure it out. Like if it's laid out for you, like if I'll give you this example. Okay, you order something from IKEA and you're just like, let me just throw these instructions away right quick. And there's like 700 pieces. And you're like, how do I put this? Let me just figure it out. I'm just going to figure it out. Like probably there are some people who are adept at that and can do that. I'm not that person. Like if there's a shortcut, if there's a manual that can help me to arrive at my goal, which is the divine, which is enlightenment, which is gnosis, I'm going to take that every time. Like, why not? And it's like somebody on Instagram wrote one time, like, it doesn't matter if you have someone's recipe, like you don't have their hands, you don't have their water, you don't have like the fruit and the air in their house that they're breathing. Because when I make my smoothie compared to the smoothie that I buy at that place, like it's not similar at all, even though I'm using the exact same ingredients and the exact same proportions, and it's just like this thing happens where like it's impossible to copy, so even if you are following a religion, even if you are following a tradition, you have to make it your own. You have to choose to allow it to penetrate and permeate your entire being. Mm-hmm. And it has to become a part of you. Otherwise, critical thinking goes out the window. And that's when people get abused. That's when, spiritual abuse can happen. That's when like guru culture becomes toxic, because you have to have this tradition that is yours and is speaking to you directly. Like in Islam, we don't believe in a hierarchy of authority. There's no priests. There's no, it's you and God, period. There's nobody, there's no what's the word? Intercessor. I think that's
intermediary.
Yeah, there's no intermediary between you and God. It's just you and God. And through your heart, like God says that in a hadith Qudsi, Allah says that the entire universe could not contain me, but the heart of the one walking the path can contain me. And for me, that's just like, first of all, whoa. Like, what is it about the heart, this spiritual organ that's not necessarily physical, but is physical, is like we talk about our minds being separate from our brains. That's how you have to think about your spiritual heart and your physical heart, like your consciousness doesn't necessarily exist inside of your brain. I actually believe that it exists inside of our hearts. And that when our hearts stop beating, we stop being alive, essentially. Our brains shut down and our lungs shut down and the rest of our bodies shut down. And that's because the spiritual heart and the soul And the heart itself is where our essence exists. It's the central focus point. And when we're not in the work of listening and being connected to our hearts, we're not actually doing religion right. We're not actually walking the path, because the path tells us question, wrestle, discern, be somebody who's engaged in observing the world around you so that you can be the best part of it that you can be and understand your integral part. Yes, we're small creatures and yet we're so big, in the story of the universe. Like, think about humanity and think about yourself, the conversation of the microcosm and the macrocosm. Ali, the cousin of the prophet, he said that we contain the entirety of the universe within us. That while being the microcosm, we are also containing the macrocosm, and that those conversations are eternally and cyclically happening all at the same time. And yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. I mean, for myself, I don't have a religion that I grew up with or that carries me through my day-to-day life. I've certainly experimented and with several in my life, but music became my own path as a form of meditation, as a form of that feedback loop of understanding, of being in the cosmic ocean, of hearing, of listening, and allowing something larger to feel that it could be expressed through me. And creativity in itself, I think, is something really sacred and special in that way for a lot of people, because it can be beyond mind and can allow for the heart to speak through. And music for you, I mean, that's one of the reasons we're talking initially, because you've used music and you use it as a way in your own life to talk about some of these themes that we've been discussing and express yourself, and as a form of activism. We didn't even really get into any of the stuff about music, but I'm just curious, this kind of practical front. Are you a producer? Are you writing the music? Are you getting your hands in there and creating the tracks, or what's it look like for you when you make music?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a household where music was forbidden, so it's all very
forbidden.
Yeah, there's an entire conversation about music and it leading to lewdness and evil, and how it can be definitely used as a tool for evil. But I believe that, like anything, instead of just saying that this thing, I mean, anybody who's really studied the tradition understands that that's a terrible reductivist attitude towards what was actually said in the tradition, and that you don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
That happens a lot. Yeah, as we reinterpret words and translations.
Yeah.
There's these intellectual arguments about what it means over thousands of years.
Exactly. And so I, as somebody who has studied the tradition, I don't believe that music is forbidden, but it just means that I didn't necessarily grow up learning music or knowing music or understanding it. But in my heart, I always had melodies and beats and drums coming through. And and so I'm just now in a place where I have a little, drum kit and beat pad where I'm getting a little bit more comfortable and creative. My song Lifted, I just had my second baby. I was in the midst of grad school and I was drowning. I can honestly say that I couldn't see the shore. And postpartum depression was so intense for me at that time. And this melody came through, and the melody really healed me and shook me and woke me back up and said that if you want to get out of this, you can, but it's going to take X, Y, and Z. And you have to try. You have to work with us, all of the angelic beings that are always on our side helping us. the melody that came through was so healing to my heart. The melody just came through so strong and healed me. And I knew right then and that was like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, you know, that music was going to stay a part of my life no matter what else I was doing, even if it transformed itself to look one way or another. But yeah, I love the process of creating and working with melodies and drums and beats to produce something that is connected to people's hearts, connected to their spirits, and ultimately is healing.
So much hope for the world, so much worth dying for, even more worth living for. Balance is imperative, a liberating narrative. I see you, I feel you, in your struggle, in your pain, trying to win at this game. Don't give up, fight the good fight, pray all through the night, wake up to reality, an alternate dimension of compassion, of expansion, of attraction, no transaction, all free, be free, so free, wake up to the truth. Multiverse is generous, emerging so victorious, on the dean of tenderness, dive deep, drown sweet, give into the wave, it's a new day. I can lift you. I know the world seems crazy, I'll be down for you, baby, I'll be right here, right here. If you let me, let's get lifted. When the world falls down and there's no one else around, I'll be right here, you know, right here.
Yeah, I mean, you're really building bridges between something ancient and bringing it into this new world, and with all the contradictions and truth along the way. I really honor you for that, and thank you, for being bold and singing your own truth and doing it in a way that's your own voice. And I'm sure, as I read in some stuff about you, that it's going to stir the pot, but that means you're doing something right with your art.
I hope so. All we can do is do our best and, pray that God uses us in the ways that are beautiful and healing. And even if God is using us to trigger people, like, that can be good and useful too. So
it's grist for the mill. And it sounds like, you're having some fun along the way, which is a good sign.
Well, gratitude to you for what you do and sharing these stories that you share. And thank you so much for letting me come on your podcast.
Yeah, thank you for speaking about such personal subjects and nuanced subjects with such honesty. And it's helpful for me. How can people find your world best?
I would say I'm most active on Instagram. Definitely. I just made a TikTok, but yeah, it's the most.
Uh-oh.
I know. Watch out, TikTok. It's the most Mona on Instagram.
Well, there it is. Thank you so much, Mona, for joining us on the podcast. I had a really good time talking to her, and I hope we can do it again. This song that you are listening to in the background is called Hijab, Rap My Hijab. So check it out in full fidelity. Check out all her new stuff. It's cool that we got a little peek into some of her new stuff there with that song, Lifted. But yeah, I'm so grateful we could do this. If you do like this podcast, please give it a review. All you have to do is, if you're on Apple Podcasts, you can, at the beginning there, you can scroll all the way down, hit the 5 stars right now. You can give a review. If you've left a review in the past, you know what? That's okay. You can leave a review again. Bannerman says, I love your music and your podcasts. Thank you. You're welcome. Ayurvedic Auto Harp, you've given reviews before, and you're doing it again. Thank you so much. He says, so generous and loving of you to share with us about the passing of your teacher, Krishna. It was an especially touching podcast to hear on Christmas Eve with love. Ayurveda Auto Harp. You're welcome. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Listen, you guys, keep walking your walk. I will see you soon. Thank you for sharing this podcast, for spreading the good word. Keep walking it, doing it, seeing it, loving it. Peace. And do it with grace.
So even if you hate it, I still rap my hijab, rap my hijab, rap my hijab, rap my hijab. Keep swagging my hijab, swagging my hijab, swagging my hijab, swagging my hijab. I still rap my hijab, rap my hijab, rap my hijab, rap my hijab. Keep swagging my hijab. my sisters, these mipsters, these hippies, these prissies, these Sufis, these dreadies, these Sunnis, these Shi'is, Yemenis, Somalis, Lebanese, Pakistanis, these Sudis, Sudanis, Iraqis, Punjabis, Afghanis, Yazidis, Khadijis, Indonesians, Egyptians, Canadians, Algerians, Nigerians, Americans, Libyans, Tunisians, Palestinians, hidden beyond the Mekong and Laos, Senegalese and Burkina Faso. I still rap.